Hello everyone, and I hope that you are having a wonderful first couple of months of 2024. Generally by about this time in the year, those of us who make New Year's resolutions every year to do something different or to get better at something or, to do better, most of us have rearranged our lives utterly. And at this point, generally things have sort of swung back to the way they were prior to us trying to change everything. Because generally we try to change things much too quickly. So, a couple of months ago, I did a segment on a local TV station and talked a little bit about habit stacking and how to actually make sure that some of the things that we are hoping to change in our lives actually stick and actually are different than what we had them be before, and how to do it in a way that is not excessively stressful, that is not leading to, for most people, failure. And so I thought I would expand on that a little bit in a video for this one, just because there was some interest in it, and some people had never heard of the idea before. And when you're doing a spot on the news, you only have 3 minutes to get through as much as you can. And so with our YouTube channel, it gives me the opportunity to talk a little bit more about what it actually is and how to implement it. So as I mentioned, if anyone saw my video from before, there's this concept out there right now called habit stacking. And basically what that means is that we are adding new habits to established habits in order to build a more solid base and make habits more sustainable. The term itself is actually just another phrase for something that's called chaining. So psychologists have used chaining for probably since psychology came over to North America from Europe, in terms of how do you modify behavior and how do you make things different. And so, of course, as it often does, concepts tend to recycle themselves and show up with different titles, different little tweaks to how they're done. But basically the underlying concept is the same. And that is that basically we want to be very intentional with how we change things. We want to do it in a very slow, build step-by-step manner. And we want to definitely be aware that our lives are the way they are for a reason. And so sometimes if we want to change a habit, there's more in our lives that needs to change than just that one particular habit. Because most of us, when we develop habits, it's not just because one day we woke up and went, I think today I'm going to start having an issue with eating too much sugar. Generally, we end up there quite unintentionally, and we end up there due to things that are happening in our world, due to perhaps genetic predispositions, due to a lot of things, that simply making up your mind one day that I'm never going to, say, touch sugar ever again is not necessarily going to be enough to make the change. So if we were going to do some chaining or some habit stacking for a habit that you would like to change, the first thing that you want to do is identify what habit is it. Do I want to remove and replace something, or do I want to add something to my day-to-day activities? If you're looking to remove and replace, it looks a little bit different. Today I'm going to talk about actually adding something to your regular day-to-day activities, because that's a little bit more of a simplified concept. On the next videos, perhaps the next one I post, I'll get a little more into how do you remove something and replace it with something different. But for example, let's say that I decide I want to start drinking a glass of warm water every morning when I get out of bed. Maybe my dietitian has suggested that it helps digestion or whatever. So I think, okay, I'm going to start that. But every morning you find you go through the same routine. You get up, you make your coffee, you drink your coffee, you're half asleep. You know, you manage to stumble into the bathroom and brush your teeth, and then you realize, oh man, I'm running behind, and so you run out the door, and then you get in the car, and it occurs to you that you totally forgot about your glass of warm water you were going to drink this morning. And you might make like 2 or 3 days out of the week, but most of the days you fall back into those old patterns because you're just not intentional. So if I were to talk to someone about how to approach this, the first thing we would do is look at their morning routine. What are all the small things that you already do habitually in your morning routine? So for our hypothetical person, obviously, you know, they get up out of bed, maybe they put on the coffee, then they make something for breakfast, and they drink their coffee, and then they go, you know, brush their teeth and wash their face and get dressed, and then head out the door. Once I've looked at that whole sequence that I could label getting ready in the morning, I'm going to identify the things that in that sequence are automatic. Now, all of us have different aspects of our behavior that even if we're half asleep, for most of us, we can carry through them. So if I said to you, okay, I want you to get ready for bed, then you would think, well, okay, I'm going to get ready for bed. And you're going to activate the concept or the idea of getting ready for bed in your brain, but your brain automatically, because of repetition, accesses things like brushing teeth. What are the steps I need for that? Washing my face. What are the steps I need for that? You know, changing into my pajamas. We don't have to think through every little piece of that to make it happen. Our brain just accesses, you know, going to bed, and our system clicks into our habitual behavior. Now, if we're going to add something new, let's say to our getting ready for work in the morning set of behaviors, I want to pick my new behavior and attach it to something or put it beside something in my routine that already happens naturally. So I activate my getting ready for work behaviors, maybe you could say my getting ready for work behavioral script, and I start going through automatically every single step. And I might decide, okay, when I turn on the coffee pot, that's going to be my cue to drinking my glass of warm water. And so instead of seeing it as a completely separate activity, maybe the night before I leave the glass on the counter so that I set up the coffee maker or I turn it on and automatically there's my glass, I pick it up, I drink my warm water, and then I continue on with my chain of getting ready for work behaviors. That will work much better because, first of all, you already have momentum. You're not focusing on, great, now I have to get up the energy to get the momentum to do this new task. Momentum is already happening. So the start, which is often the hardest piece for people, has already started occurring. I've paired it to something, in this particular instance, making the coffee or turning on the coffee pot, that I do naturally every morning without thinking. So I don't have to get up and say, okay, what do I have to do to get ready for work? I just get up and start moving. So when I hit the coffee pot, it cues me, okay, drink my water, carry on. And what will happen is eventually that series of behaviors that we have in our mind that are perhaps getting ready for work is going to eventually contain that glass of water. So when you initiate the getting ready for work behavioral script in your head, you're going to go through all of the steps, including drinking the water, as naturally as you do everything right now. So it won't have to be a whole new thought at a whole new place in your world. And then once you've got that in there, maybe you decide to add to it. So, okay, I'm going to start drinking a glass of warm water and I'm going to have some healthy protein in the morning. So again, you're going to look at your list of behaviors that fall under the category of getting ready for work in the morning. You're going to identify a spot might be when you turn the coffee pot on or when you drink your glass of warm water that you're going to put, eating a bit of protein of some sort. And then you're going to continue with your regular script of behaviors that fall under getting ready for work. Now, again, it takes time, it takes repetition, but eventually, just like the glass of warm water, eventually having the protein in the morning with your glass of warm water is going to become part of that script of behavior and not require continuous behavioral thought. So if this is something you decide to try, there are a few keys to being successful. For example, you pick a small behavior, one that you can complete during this behavioral script that you choose to work with. So if I decided, I'm going to, make this huge change of making this massive healthy breakfast during my morning behavioral script getting ready for work, that's not going to work. It's too large, it's too much, it's too complex. But I can break it down and make it smaller so that I get to the point where I'm making a whole good breakfast in the morning. And the first thing might be I add to my script of getting ready for work, waking up half an hour early. So I might add it to the beginning of my script. And then after that becomes a habit, then I might add, I'm going to have some fruit with my cereal in the morning. So when I see my cereal or my toast or whatever I habitually eat in the morning, I'm going to grab a piece of fruit. So that becomes my start. Or I might decide, when I get my cereal ready, I'm going to crack an egg onto the frying pan, and then when I come back to eat my cereal, I will have an egg at the same time. And again, simple, completable pieces that you're adding. I would never add something like, I want to eat eggs in the morning, so, I'm going to add breaking open an egg after, I pour my cereal. I'm going to make it a complete small activity, so I'm going to break the egg and fry it and actually eat it, because that has more impact than saying, I'm just going to knock the egg once on the side of the bowl and then I'm going to go back to eating my cereal. That's not going to get you where you want to be. So basically, make sure your activities that you choose are small and completable. Repetition is key. So the first bunch of times that you do this, you are going to have to think about it. You might have to leave yourself a note to remember. You might have to maybe set, let's say, the glass for warm water out the night before so that you have the visual cue of there being a glass when you go to make your coffee. The reason that you're going to need to cue yourself for the first chunk of time is it takes a little while for that link to get added into your behavioral chain or your behavioral script. Just like everything else that is already in there, it took a few years or a few repetitions of it for it to become as automatic as it is right now. So don't get frustrated or don't give up, because it has to be consistently repeated, and you might miss some days, and that's okay. Every day is a new chance to try adding it to the behavioral chain. So you don't have to give up because you miss a glass of water one morning or even for a week. You can pick it back up, restart linking it into your chain, and do it consistently. The other piece that is really important to consider is, am I able to make the adjustments to my schedule required to adding this additional link to my behavioral chain? So for example, with our person that may want to make a full breakfast in the morning prior to work, they're going to have to adjust their schedule so that they're getting up a half an hour earlier. And that perhaps might be the only piece they start with. If they decided, in the amount of time I have every morning, I'm going to now add making a whole breakfast, it's not going to work because you don't have the time to do what you need to do. You're not going to complete what you've decided to be the link in your chain, and it's too big of a jump. And so you will consistently be unable to do it. Now, you can change any type of behavior like this if you're looking at more complex behavior. So it might be you decide, when I go to the office in the morning, I want to stop and get pastries for everybody. You can add that. If you decide, on Sundays I want to start having a nap in the afternoon, you can add that. This will allow you to bring anything into your routine. Now, next time when we talk about replacing, so perhaps you have a habit of watching TV all afternoon on Saturdays and you think, well, I'd like to start going for a walk, or I'd like to stop watching TV altogether and I'd like to do something else. As I mentioned, that's a little more complicated of a process, but we'll discuss that probably during our next video. So it gives you the opportunity to maybe try a couple of the simple ones before we get into something a little more complex. Best advice I have though is don't give up and don't get discouraged. This is going to be a long-term project, and if something consistently is not happening, then you may have to reevaluate how big of a change you're trying to make, or how big of a behavior you're trying to add, because it can always be made smaller, and there's ways to do that that still allow you to complete the activity. So hopefully this was helpful. I usually suggest this is a paper and pencil activity to some of my clients. So sit down and pick what you want to change, look at the time of day you'd like to add it, or the time of day you'd like to start doing it, and then write out the behavioral chain or the activity that you do during that part of the day that you want to add it to. So examples of chains that most of us have, cooking a meal generally is a chain. Putting the kids to bed usually, is a chain. Settling down and watching TV in the evening, that can be a chain as well. So events that you see yourself doing that you kind of put together with a beginning and an end, those are what you want to list and look at, and then decide where within that to add the new link or the new piece. So good luck, everybody. Changing habits is not easy, but it's doable, and hopefully this helps.